I work for Property Investor Africa. I'd just like to go through a few things with you about Africa. I was born and raised in Africa, but I've been working in the UK since, and I've never worked in Africa until recently as well. So you can see that through that pain, I've been able to use that pain to be in property. In fact, in the UK, in the corporate world, I used to work as a group finance director for a housing company. I've sat on boards of housing companies. So housing has always been a penchant of mine because of the pain I came from, because of the fact that I never had a room to myself. When I see my kids having rooms and having en suites, I said, they don't know how things developed. They don't know what they're getting. And so when they wake up and they don't want to study and all that, I just look at them and I laugh. I say, the world is a funny place. So the reason I started Property Investor Africa is because having been in having been a portfolio landlord and been in real estate, I'm a chartered accountant as well as a mortgage broker. That is another story, being a mortgage broker. But the whole thing is, I want to be able to do to Africa what Africa did to me. What Africa did to me was to make me very, very hungry about owning a place to sleep. I just wanted one room to sleep in. I just wanted one room where I'll be comfortable and read my book or listen to my radio or something like that. I never had that time because, you know, you just stretch your leg and some sibling will do, you know, and then you turn your head down, another will do, you know, you don't want to be that comfortable. So basically, the whole idea is I want to make sure that people in Africa or anywhere in the world for that matter are able to have homes to live in so that they can excel, they can be who they want to be. Anyway, so I'll take you through to Property Investor Africa. And that is my story about why I'm into real estate. I could be working in any corporate organization as a chartered accountant, but I chose to be in property because I want to make sure I make a difference in property. I like this inspirational quote by Nelson Mandela, which said that there is no passion to be found playing small in settling for the life that is less than the one you are capable of living. I was settling for less than the life I was capable of living, because I lived in that mediocre environment, not because that is what I chose to be, it's because that is where I found myself. And therefore, a majority of people in Africa tend to live less than who or what they're capable of living. 10, 12 years ago, The Economist, which is the bastion of economic news in the world, said Africa was the hopeless continent. I'm sure you've heard all this before. But let me repeat it again, because I have my own, color to it. The hopeless continent, because everywhere you looked in Africa, there was war and everything else was chaotic. Ebola hadn't arrived. That's another story. But 10 years later, the same economists, I don't know whether people have said anything about it or not, they came out saying, Africa is rising. Africa was rising, why? Because throughout Africa, GDP averaged 6.5%. From the south to the north, irrespective of the Arab Spring, irrespective of the wars in the West in Sierra Leone, irrespective of the wars in Somalia and all those places. All throughout Africa, in most of Africa, GDP was going through 6.5%. So Africa has become an emerging status. Africa has become one of the EMEA. They label it the EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. At least Africa is still part of it. At the moment in Africa, there are a lot of democracies. I happen to come from Ghana, which has been in democracy for 22 years. There is very rarely anywhere in Africa where you hear a military junta has risen one morning and taken the gun, shot somebody or killed people and taken power and driven all the foreigners out like Idi Amin used to do. There is nowhere in Africa that you can find that anymore. Mali. Somebody says Mali. Okay. Angola, Mozambique, Botswana, all of these countries are growing very, very well. And there is a genuine middle class. When I say genuine middle class, people actually go to school, they're educated, they go to business school. If you trip in a place in Nigeria, if you go and step on somebody's foot at the airport in Accra or Nairobi, the person would hit you with an MBA. Or they'll hit you with a master's in something. Everybody, a lot of people are educated. So the Africa that we knew 20 years ago is not the same. And surprisingly, a lot of these people have been educated in the West. They have an American twang or an English Cockney something somewhere, but they're very educated. So when I say there's a genuine middle class, these are people who have schooled in the West or even in Africa in very good business schools and are doing very, very well. And that means they can afford decent homes. In 2012, 2013, I've missed the 2 there, Africa produced 6 of the 10 fastest growing countries in the world. The whole universe. Africa produced 6 of the 10 fastest growing countries, and economies. And there is huge demand, basically, about Africa in terms of property and everything else. If you look at Broll is it's a South African company and it deals with property. And Broll does an annual report. And Broll said here in the 2013 report that Sub-Saharan Africa's growth is a compelling one. And the region is seen by many as the last frontier for growth. You know, I don't like using cliches. I don't know about you. I'm the last frontier for growth and all that nonsense, really. But what I know is that there is a huge opportunity in Africa. For Property Investor Africa, we've segmented our market into different countries. I was speaking to a few people at our stand, and the mention of Nigeria alone, somebody just said, ooh. I said, no, you can't say that, because Nigeria, after debasing of the economies, is the largest economy in Africa. So how can you ignore the largest economy in Africa? Irrespective of Boko Haram, irrespective of the 200 or so girls who have been abducted, irrespective of Ebola. Ebola would come and go. HIV has come, it's going. A lot of things, well, there is cancer in the West, or in fact, there's more prevalence of cancer in the West. Are we saying because of that the economy of the West is going? No. So these are short-term issues that can be ironed out. South Africa obviously is the most mature property market in Africa. Ghana is another mature country, Kenya, Ethiopia, Angola, Rwanda, Zambia, Mozambique. These are all countries that are doing well. Our third tier, basically, or tier 3, is the northern countries. Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. The reason why we set up Property Investor Africa, I had been to all these property shows, and I found properties in the Czech Republic, where I have been several times, Hungary, Portugal, Spain, Detroit, Atlanta, Florida. All these had properties showing at Property Investor Africa. I never saw a single country from Africa showing their properties. And I wondered, are we still living on trees? Ladies and gentlemen, we're not still living on trees. Because in 2011, I saw properties in Africa, 3-bedroom apartments were going for 1.5 million in Africa. What good can come from Africa? I'll tell you what good can come from Africa. There are challenges in Africa, make no mistakes. There is limited mortgage facilities. That is an area for investment for anybody. The banks and lenders have very strict criteria because delinquency in mortgages or in loan, it's very high. Customer services are not strictly to international standards as we have in the UK. If you're buying a property in the UK, you go to the agent, Barratt's, Fairview, whoever, and then you can do your assessment, you put your mortgages in, you get your lawyer selling, lawyer buying. You can do all of that. It's not that easy in Africa. Virtually, there are no international institutions operating mortgage facilities in Africa. Like you have Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac in the US. You don't have any of these in Africa. There are pockets of lenders who lend to very few middle-class people. And the majority of people can't afford a mortgage or don't even understand what mortgages are. And transactions are done on an individual basis. And also, there are pockets of developers. It's just small companies. You don't have very large companies. Litigation issues and land issues is the chronic Achilles heel for property development in Africa. Of course, lights, roads, infrastructural deficits. I went to a place in Abuja and the house was shining. Beautiful house. You just go, wow. But the road leading to that property is something to behold. Why? Because the person who owns the house is probably a government official or some oil mogul, and he drives an air-conditioned car, comes from an air-conditioned office, and goes to an air-conditioned home. So the road that they tread on or drive on is not something they think about. That is what the governments in Africa must tackle if they are to get investors to come in and invest in Africa. So there's lack of roads and lights and water and things like that. In places in Ghana and Nigeria, with all the oil mining from the 70s, you were sitting at a board meeting and the lights would just go, phew. Nobody, can't see anybody. Then by the time you say Jack, phew, the lights are on. You can't have that. These are some of the chronic issues that Africa has. In spite of that, there is good news in Africa. Something good can come from Africa. The governments and the financial institutions are now beginning to understand that to build their infrastructure, to build their property markets, they have to have mortgages. Recently, Stanbic Bank from Ghana was here making a lot of hoo-ha about wanting to get investors to take mortgages. That was very encouraging. I also attended the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company. The CEO, Mr. Ayeri, he did a presentation I attended. And I'm beginning to think that Nigeria, for very shortly, would become one of the largest mortgage providers in Africa. Because I know Nigeria, what they do, the banks are all over the place in Africa at the moment. Access Bank, UBA, all of these are in all the African countries. So as soon as Nigeria gets the mortgage system right, they will be expanding to Africa. And so let's watch the space. In Ghana, there's Ghana Home Loans, HFC, Stanbic Bank, and in Kenya, Equity Bank. All of these countries are beginning to see that it's good to do mortgages and it's also good to help people to buy properties. The only difference is that these companies or these financial institutions haven't got the capital, they haven't got the liquidity to actually advance mortgages. That is why I appeal to a lot of these financial institutions in the West that, look, there's good business in Africa in terms of mortgage. Partner with some of these banks. They should be partnering with some of these banks to do that. So in terms of opportunities for you and I as individuals who want to invest in Africa, I would say this, that there is nowhere in the world at the moment would you find rental yields surpassing Africa. I know about Malaysia. I know the Chinese market is going down. I know about Dubai, the properties are falling. England, or UK, we're just coming out of the recession. In America, you can flip properties in Dubai, in Florida, in Detroit, in Atlanta, for next to nothing, still. In Europe, Spain, Portugal, Algarve, all of those places, properties are still like this. Because UK investors used to rush to Portugal, they used to rush to Spain, and they'll get us to buy properties there, and they'll sit here on their high horse and expect that there'll be rental yields and they'll be getting the money. Hello? They used to have bills for service charges, £700, £800. I'm supposed to get rental yields. I'm getting service charges that I haven't paid. Please sell the property. So they stopped. All that time, through that time, there was no single company telling people that actually, in Africa, you could have gotten 25% rental yields instead of getting a service charge bill of 25% of your value of your property or of the value of your monthly rental. So the financial and legal framework and everything, things are coming up in Africa. So depending on your risk appetite, property yields in Africa far surpasses the risks in the market. Where else in the world would you get capital appreciation for 20% per annum? There's nowhere in the world but Africa. I'll tell you about the property hotspots. And of course, I'm going to be biased because I come from Ghana. And this is the little kid who used to sleep in the coach. This is the little kid who used to see their mother live in a house which was uncompleted. And believe it or not, when I went to Ghana, and every time I go to Ghana, I walk past the house I saw my mom live in. Just to remind myself about how life has become for me. Because sometimes you need a little reminder to tell you how things can be. So when in the UK I come back and my tenants are, causing confusion and trouble, and I just look at it and say, ain't I blessed? I wish I was a tenant like that. I wish I could even afford to rent a home. In Ghana, for example, at the moment, there are very good properties in Ghana. I bought a property in Ghana in 2009 for $150,000. I've been there 3 times this year. When I wanted to rent it, they told me I can rent it for $1,300 a month. And because I wanted to test the mortgage system, I actually got a mortgage for it. Not because I couldn't pay for it, but I got a mortgage for it. The mortgage took me 2 years to get. I said, really? But now things have changed completely. When I wanted to sell the property, I wanted to get the valuation on it. I put it on for $350. I had a rush of people, and I personally took people to the home to show them the home. And I had offers, but I was not selling. Before I do anything, I like to test it myself before I sell anything to anybody. So, from $150,000 in January 2009, I can sell the property for $350,000, $200,000 profit. From January 2009 to now, if you had a UK property portfolio, unless of course it's in West London, you know that it's pretty steady. The UK is a beautiful market, it's still fantastic. But as risks and returns, if you know the conundrum, if you want to make money, go to Africa. Kenya is the same thing. Kenya is doing very well. Kenya is the hub of East Africa. Tanzania, Zambia, and all those surrounding countries see Kenyan property as realistic in terms of investment, investment. And also Kenya is one of the maturest financial systems that you can get in Africa. You know, in Pesa, where they use mobile phones to make transfers and things like that. Kenya Equity Bank is doing a lot of mortgages, and they even allowed people from outside Kenya to make payments through a lot of the systems that they've set up. So Kenya is a doing well place. Tatu City, Malindi, and all these places, you know, they even have Chigwell holdings. I live close to Chigwell, but I don't know if it's the same as the Chigwell in Essex. But Kenya is a beautiful place, and it is doing well in terms of investment. Nigeria, as I mentioned, Nigeria. There's a lot of places. If you go to Ikoyi in Nigeria, you go to Lagos, you go to Victoria Island and things like that. These are all places that are doing very well. Fantastic. Abuja, Port Harcourt. You can make money in Nigeria. There is money to be made in Nigeria. Only if you want to try. South Africa, of course, the maturest property destination in Africa. The rules are good. The regulations are fantastic. They're close to what we have here in the UK, and it's not, you don't have to weave through a lot of, challenges. So South Africa is a destination that you can really, really have good property management companies that would really rent your property for you. When we're selling properties in Portugal and Spain and all that, people never visited Spain. They never visited Portugal. So why do you ask me, why do I invest in the UK, in Africa, when I don't go to Africa? Did you go to Spain? Did you go to Portugal? Did you go to Czech Republic? Have you even ever visited Turkey? But you invest in those places. So ladies and gentlemen, just as you want to invest in any other part of the world, or Detroit, or Atlanta, or anywhere else, please do think about Africa too. If you walk past here, and I remember when we started business, my office was here in the Waterfront Studios. My first exhibition here was in 2005. There are several properties around here that look like this. If I didn't tell you this property was from Ghana, would you know? You wouldn't. This property is actually in Ghana. And for just 90.5 square meters, 2 beds, it's selling us $268,000. That's about how much in pounds? 190,000 pounds? So it's pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive. But the rent you will get for this property is fantastic. The good news is that in Ghana and places in Africa, you can get your rent 2 years in advance, 3 years in advance. In the UK, the deposit scheme, they will get you. In fact, the law will not allow it. They'll tell you you're defrauding the tenant. And sometimes, in our company, we make a living by going to court to help people starve of repossession and things like that. And I know that if you took rent 2 years in advance, well, nobody's going to take it up anywhere in the UK because the law would not allow it. In Ghana, in Nigeria, in Kenya, you will take 2 years in advance. So if you're an investor and you put your deposit, 25% deposit on and take a mortgage, you can actually literally take almost equivalent to your deposit out in your rental, the rent you get for 2-3 years. So this is so in terms of the investor options, you can rent these properties to wealthy individuals. All the countries I mentioned, from Uganda to Ghana to Nigeria, these are all countries that have found significant oil and gas. And therefore, there's a lot of foreign people going there. The Chinese, well, every village you go in Africa now, you see a Chinese. So there are a lot of people who are going to these places who don't want to buy property outright. And there are a lot of intra-African businesses, government officials from other African countries who come to these countries to do work. UN and all these countries, organizations, they have their staff there. So those are the people you rent to. It's not your Joe Block on the street, because a Joe Block on the street cannot afford it. And a wealthy Nigerian, Kenyan, or Ghanaian will build. They will buy the land and build. If it takes them 100 years to build, they will build. They will not go and buy a property like this. Of course, if those who have lived outside Ghana or Africa, like you and me, who want to get up with the Joneses every morning and play basketball, and they will render, of course, until their money finishes and they start to look for the, the ghetto area. You know what I mean? So you will get people. There's a lot of mining companies. Rental yields average 20%, and capital appreciation, same thing. And so basically, you can get a lot of returns from these investments. The capital gains tax, for example, as a chartered accountant, I know about capital gains tax. We do a lot of tax work for landlords like you. And in the UK, it's not easy. You can't circumvent the rules. I'm not saying in Africa you can, but you have a flat capital gains tax, for example, in Ghana of 15%. And if you sell the property and you reinvest a proportion or all of it in another property, you pay zero capital gains tax. And if you decide to give the property or assign it or transfer ownership to any of your family members, you pay zilch capital gains tax. Where in the world would you get that? Except in Africa. This is another one, Maple Court, who I know are doing fantastic. It's the same story in Africa. I just cited these examples because I happen to have some engagement with these people. I'll tell you about Serene Suite. Serene Suites in Kampala. I've never been to Kampala. I've met the owner of Serene Suites. And in fact, in our brochure, we've mentioned about her. She's the lady at the back of the brochure, this lady. I actually met her at Holiday Inn, Westfield, Stratford, 2 weeks ago. A very fantastic lady, very quiet, married to a wealthy man. The man has passed on, but this woman is a very fantastic woman. And she's selling this property for $10 million. This is a property that your good old Gaddafi used to live in when he's in Kampala. I don't know if you want to buy a property that Gaddafi lived in, but it tells you that the property has got class. And the returns on the property, in terms of returns on investments, are good. It's got 36 suites with presidential suites and all of that. It's got cricket fields and a lot of it's out there. Of course, it's negotiable through Property Investor Africa. In the UK, buying a hotel of 10 million, you have to have the cash. And it takes a lot of legal wranglings, regulatory issues, if the taxman does not even have to investigate you, that is. Where did you get the 10 million? Try bringing £20,000 from outside Africa to the UK. You'll be impounded at the airport and they'll tell you, where did you get the money from? In Africa, people have £20,000 under their bedrooms. Easy. Here, you can't do that. Barclays Bank recently, a client of ours had £10,000 transferred into their account. He was investigated because where did you get £10,000 from if you didn't sell a property? If it's not coming from a solicitor into your account. There are a lot of businesses to be made and returns to be made in Africa. One of the areas is affordable housing. The government of Ghana in 2012, I was sitting in my office when I had a call because they wanted to build 30,000 units for military people, soldiers, nurses, police people, and all that stuff. And yet they couldn't do it because there's no investment. We're partnering with this company here to build affordable housing in Africa. And so what we're looking for is investors who have appetite, because we get government guarantees. If the government comes in, then we know that the money is secure. And you get your returns on investment as soon as the properties are built. So if you don't want to buy a property and rent, there are other options that you can choose to have, which is invest in development companies that are building in Africa. And we get the finances done for you and everything else. So you can actually invest. So there's also development finance, partner with companies and estate management companies and things like that. So there's quite a lot of things. One of the things we find in Africa is the maintenance culture is very poor. There's very few property maintenance companies there. Once the property is built, that is it. So if you set up a management company, you're onto a kill. Because Joe Blocks, you and I are buying the property here, we're sitting here, and we're looking for a company out there to manage it for us. So if you have a management company there, so those of you who don't even want to buy property and rent, or who don't have that as some of the things that you want to do, you can actually set up maintenance company, management companies, and it will do very well there. That is all I have to say about property investments in Africa. What I want to ask you is, who has a property in Africa from here? Where is that? Morocco. Are you renting it?
I have quite a lot rented. Some short there, some long.
Is it doing well? Would you compare that to, have you got properties in the UK too?
A couple.
Right. And how do you compare your rental yields in Morocco to those in the UK?
Morocco isn't that 20% yield.
Yeah.
And the tenants, to be honest, I want to sell.
You want to sell in
I
Morocco?
want to sell because the tenancy laws are different when I go to UK. That's what I'm going to ask you, if it's the same where you are. Because
Yeah.
in Morocco, the tenant has more rights than they do here. There's no cap. It's not like, for example, in UK, you rent out a property with a 12-month tenancy agreement. Over there, there's no 12 months. You can sign a tenancy, that's it. There is no cap.
They have to have a duration though.
There is no duration. Honestly, there is no duration.
I
If
see.
you try to get them out, you have to, most of the time, you have to pay them to get out.
Oh, really? Wow. I'd love to be a tenant in Morocco then, because I never pay.
No. If you don't pay, I can get you out.
Right.
As long as you pay your rent, like, for example, in UK, you may buy a flat, and then it's gone up in value, you want to sell it. So you can say to a tenant, oh, 6 months break, or I want you to leave. You have 2 months to, I'm going to sell my property. You can't do that.
I see.
As long as the tenant pays the rent, you cannot kick him out.
I see.
That's what I was saying, it's the same in Ghana.
Well, over there in Ghana and Nigeria and Kenya, for example, if somebody doesn't pay your rent,
No, as long as they're paying, you can't get them out.
yeah, if they pay your rent, you can still get them out because there is tenancy laws there that will support you. But frankly speaking, if the person won't get out, just get the boys in and they will get out. Just get the boys in.
As long as they're paying the rent, you legally can't kick them out.
Whether they pay or they don't pay, and you want your property, my friend, get the boys in.
You can't do that, man. You have the same rules over there.
It's kind of same with Ghana.
Yeah.
If you want your tenant to get out by force, you just increase the rent.
Yeah, you increase the rent.
But you can't, but there's only a certain amount that you can increase.
A certain percentage, yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. The landlord determines how much you need to have.
So how are legal rights administered in Morocco? Legal rights. There must be some.
No, there is, but that's what I'm saying, the tenancy laws, like for rental properties,
I'll tell you something. It's not,
you can't say to someone, come and rent my property for 12 months.
So there's no contractual obligation.
There is contract, okay, but the rent that they pay, but there's no time where you can say, after 1 year you have to leave, or 2 years, or, you have to 12 months.
So they have a tenancy for life. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Genuinely, that's what you're saying.
well, it's no different from the UK. I've got a property not far away from here. I'm a 4-region close. The tenants moved in 2011 April. And then the lady from Portugal, the guy from Ivory Coast. 3 children, 2 children then, plus an adopted girl. They said that the guy works, so private tenancy, all right. As soon as they moved in, they applied for housing benefit. The rent is £1,300 a month. The housing benefit has been paying me 700 thereabout.
They're not paying the difference.
They're not paying the difference. They've not paid the difference for 2-3 years. When we took them to court, do you know what happened? They went and got a lawyer to defend them, to say we can't get them out. So we couldn't get them out.
Because they're not paying their rent, or they're not.
They're paying the rent, but they're not paying the full rent. And the tenancy agreement is an AST, a short hold tenancy agreement. It's a 6 months tenancy agreement, or a 12 months with a 2 months breakage at the 6 month point. So at the expiry of the 12 months, the tenancy is ended. They're still there.
So couldn't you just...
You can't move them.
Why not?
Why not? Because the tenant is more powerful in the UK. The law is on the side of the tenant. The whole thing is they're still paying their rent. The housing benefit, the only thing you can do is to tell the local authority to rehouse them. How many letters haven't we sent for that local authority to rehouse them? Because the local authority is saying they're making themselves intentionally homeless if they come to them. So the tenant, we still get the money, 800, 700, 219 pounds a month, a week, but they don't want to move out. Sorry?
What's on your tenancy? They can't do that.
Say that again?
They can't do that because that's not the amount that's agreed on your tenancy.
But they are doing
There's
it.
a problem in your contract.
It's an AST. Look,
There's a problem in your contract.
we get this sort of situation in so many, especially when it comes to housing benefit. Housing benefit is a completely different kettle of fish. We would apply all because we have a mortgage brokerage section here in the UK, applicable to UK mortgages. We will do all the work, the lab work that we do as if you were taking the mortgage. We check your income, we check references, we do all of those things because we have to protect the mortgage lender from that country and make sure that you can actually take the mortgage on. And if you're renting out, of course, we'll put you in touch with other parties who would be doing the renting for you. But what we do is we source the property for you and then we also get the mortgage done for you as well.
And just to follow up
Yeah.
on that question, what assurances do people have as to, the properties that they're purchasing in
The assurances are just as we used to do for people buying properties in Portugal or Spain. If you decide you want to go and see the property, and in fact we recommend you go and see the property, then we would arrange with the developer and they will pay a proportion of your travel cost to go and see the property for yourself. And then you would then choose the particular unit that you want. And then obviously when you come back here, we will do all the paperwork for you. We have got lawyers in the relevant countries who would do the legal work over there. But we also have a lawyer here. At the back of this magazine here, you can see we awarded this guy, Peter Petru. He's an international lawyer. He's based here in the UK. He does a lot of conveyancing. We awarded him outstanding contribution to African real estate. His firm, they do all the legal work for people who are buying properties in the UK because they work with all the local lawyers out there in Africa. Yeah, go ahead.
There's different tiers of countries. How does that work out? As in this country is tier 1, this country is tier 2?
Okay, it's just a random thing that we did. The tier 1 was based on about 3-4 factors. One was democracy. We wanted to make sure that an investor who is investing in an African country was comfortable. You're only comfortable when you know there's stability. The second two was a corruption index. We wanted to make sure that the person did not have any issues about corruption. The third thing was the laws around property investments, and we checked up to make sure that Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, South Africa, the property laws are similar to those in the UK because remember they're all colonies of the UK, so it's easier to understand these, and therefore that's where the tier 1 comes in. The tier 2 is basically Zambia and all those. They're also UK colonies and all that, all right, but it's not as mature and things are a bit different. And of course the Northern Bloc is the Arab Middle East countries, Morocco, Algeria, and Egypt. The laws there are a bit different, exactly, they follow the French, except of course Egypt. Egypt follows the UK system. Yeah. So in terms of investment in Africa, think not Portugal, Think not Spain, think not Czech Republic, think Africa. Yeah.
I just have a question. How much money would somebody on average need to get started?
Oh, loads of money. I mean, if you're buying a 290 square meter property at $360,000, $360,000 is about what? £250,000? That's a huge money. So you need to cough up at least 25%. Once you get a 25%, you guarantee the mortgage of 75%. That is 200,000.
So it's not so much about easy entry level, it's more that if you've got money, you'll get high yields.
If you've got money and you want to invest in Africa, I would say that if you're buying, buy where you can get good tenants. And by good tenants, I mean people who pay you in dollars, people who pay your initial deposit or your 2 years advance rent. You know, if you're going to buy in a poor area and you have, a local person in there, it's okay. But you have to also wrestle with yourself that you may encounter certain difficulties.
So what about the person who does not have a capital to invest? Are there other ways of gaining properties?
Well, in the UK, there used to be 100% mortgages where Barracks is going to build and they'll call you, Mr. Opong, we're going to build 3 flats here. And then you go in there, you negotiate with them and they said, okay, we'll give you 100% mortgage. They tell the lender property is valued at 80,000. They tell the lender the property is valued at 100,000. And therefore you build your 20% deposit in it. And then the mortgage company gives you 80,000 and you and the lender know that the actual property price is 80,000. That is what broke the bank in the UK. That is what collapsed the mortgage market in America. So these deals are still in Africa. You can do that all day long. If you know the developer and the developer would allow it, you can do it. We know clients who have done that. Effectively, they buy property 100% because they play with the deposit and the valuation in the property.
So who would manage the property with regard to sourcing tenants and the income coming from those tenants, plus the maintenance of the property as well?
There are maintenance and management companies out there who will do it, and they're very reputable.
What service you provide?
Hi, I'm Douglas Opong, founder and CEO of Property Investor Africa. We're here at the International Property Investor and Home Buyer Show in London, and we've just finished some presentation to potential investors, and we're stating the case about property investment in Africa. And I have here with me Ada, who was at the presentation. And Ada is from Ogun State in Nigeria. Works for the Ogun State government, actually. Property investment, Ogun State. Oh, right. So, how did you see the presentation, Ada?
Okay, I think it was really nice. It was driving the point home that we need a lot of investors to come into Africa. There are lots to be harnessed from the African market, So we need to get the word out there for more and more investors to come into Africa, because the plans, the arrangements, the regulations are quite different back there anyway.
Yeah,
and it favors a lot of people, unlike the more Western, I think it was a good presentation.
So what do you think is the very burning issue in terms of real estate in Ogun State? Is it affordable housing? Is it office accommodation? Is it hotels? Is it shops? Have you got one of these ShopRites shopping malls in Ogun State?
Yeah. Right now we have a landmass right directly opposite my office where ShopRite is coming to. We already have the billboard, coming to ShopRite. So plus of course we have loads and loads of land.
Right.
Loads of land for investors to come invest in. Coupled with private buyers, of course, people want to buy a portion of land and just build their homes. Then we have ready-made houses. We have the luxury apartments. We have the affordable apartments. So it depends. So it meets the high-end market. And it also meets the low-income earners market. So
fantastic. So what would you want to say to investors who are watching you and are looking to perhaps come to Ogun State in Nigeria? Would you say they should come into the commercial sector, or would you say they should come to the residential sector?
Well, it depends. I would say you should come into both sectors.
Right.
Because, for the commercial sector, I know there might be the challenge of the power and all of that. So, because we do a lot of generators. so to speak. But for the residential sector, yes, it's just that the turnover from that is not as viable as the commercial sector, except if you're going into like real estate development, you know, where you have like estates where that you can like sell, so you have people coming to buy individually and all of that. But if you're going to buy just one house and rent it out, it might not be as viable as when you're going into the full-scale real estate development, you know, so, but maybe commercial. I think.
So if you had one last word to tell the Nigerian diasporan who is looking to invest in Nigeria, I know you would tell them to come to Ogun State, but what would you tell the Nigerian diasporan who wants to, the Nigerian or the African who wants to come and invest in real estate in Ogun State?
Okay. In Ogun State, I would ask any foreign investor, African, Western, coming to Nigeria to come to Ogun State. One, because Ogun State is relatively serene, safe, comfortable.
Where is Ogun State in the space
Just
of Nigeria?
outside Lagos State.
Okay.
And right now, Lagos is like overpopulated.
Chock-a-block, yeah.
So, you know when
There's a spillover into Ogun State.
Exactly. You know when you like fumigate a house, the insects run out to the next.
So Ogun State is where the next thing is, big thing is happening.
Are like wide open.
Right.
Receiving a lot of people.
So you're making the case for Ogun State investment. Ada here is making the case for real estate investment in Ogun State, and you know, to all the Nigerians in the diaspora, and of course Africans and also international investors who are looking to real estate in Nigeria. I'm sure that you know, you'd have your appetites whetted, and you will get a lot of returns on investments in Ogun State in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Ada, for coming to the presentation. I'll be in touch. Thank you. I'm here with Anwar. Anwar was at my presentation where I stated the case for real estate investment in Africa. Anwar is from Morocco, and he's involved in real estate in Morocco as well as in the UK. Anwar, basically, what did you take out of the presentation I made to potential investors?
That the potential for investment is a lot greater in Africa than in Europe currently.
Fantastic. So tell me about Morocco, where you come from, and although you're based in the UK, you're into real estate. Tell me about Morocco and what are you going to tell investors about Morocco?
The return on investment is greater than in the UK. The entry level is a lot less. You can buy a flat for 25 grand, 30 grand, which you can't find here.
Right.
You can rent, your rental percentage, as in your yield, is minimum 10%.
Right.
And the tax laws and
the tax laws are very good.
Tax.
What about capital gains tax?
Is 8%.
8%. That is very, very reasonable and low.
For longer than 5 years, you don't pay.
Oh, really? If you own a property for longer than 5 years, you don't pay capital gains tax, right? I see. So what particular areas, location-wise, in Morocco, would you say are attractive to invest in?
There's a few hotspots which do not drop. There's Tangiers, which are doing a lot of development. They've just built another marina. Tangiers has got the Tangiers Med Port, which is the largest port in Africa. Algeria actually uses the Tangiers port more than their own port.
I see.
Huge port.
So is that an attraction for influx of real estate activities?
Yes, because more people are coming into Tangiers to live. The King Mohammed Sadis, he's developed Tangiers greatly. He's developed the infrastructure. There's motorways all over Morocco. Tangiers, they're expanding. They're building, obviously, they're building infrastructure. It's expanding. We don't really have the shortage of electricity that you find in Sub-Saharan Africa. And Tangiers, Casablanca is the financial hub.
Fantastic.
Of Morocco. You have Rabat, which is
Rabat,
Marrakesh, which is like
Marrakesh, the tourist destination.
Those 4 places you won't lose.
So if an investor wanted to come to Morocco, what is the sure bet?
Tangiers, Marrakesh. The banks, there is actually Moroccan banks in the UK.
There are Moroccan banks in the UK.
There's Tijeri Wafa Bank, there's Bank Sha'bi, there's BMC Bank. which all have offices located in central London, who arrange your finance to buy your property in Morocco. They arrange all of the paperwork for you.
And would somebody coming from, say, Nigeria or Kenya or South Africa or Ghana or Uganda, would they be able to get mortgage in Morocco? Is mortgages catering for foreign people too?
For foreign, they used to be 100%, but I think now for foreign it's maximum 80%.
80%. So you have to put a deposit of 20% down. I see. All right. So overall, if you had to tell people to come and invest in real estate in Morocco, what would you tell them if you look in the camera?
Come to Tangiers, go to Marrakesh, invest your money wisely. Do not be afraid. People are making millions and millions and millions right now. Even from the institutional investor aspect, the larger developments, social housing, there's many, many, many opportunities.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amor. All right. Cheers. Okay. The case is very stated, very clearly. Real estate in Africa is open for business, and we are appealing to all investors in Africa, within Africa, and outside of Africa, especially to the diaspora and also to all the Western and international investors. If you come to Tangier in Morocco, in Marrakesh, you will get very good returns on investment. Places in Ghana, in Accra, and in Takoradi, in Kenya, in South Africa, Namibia, Uganda. There are all sorts of places in Africa where returns on investment exceed 10%. And so all we will tell investors is come to Africa. Africa's real estate is open for business. Thank you.